you built a very complicated model, but then no one uses it, or your boss doesn't really like it. So you can perfect a recommendation model 90% accuracy, flawless cross validation, the type of work that you've been working on for months, but then no one uses it. And the feedback is that users ignore the recommendation and people don't really push this feature. So technically it was brilliant, and only you know that it's brilliant, but it's basically useless. This is the common issue with a lot of people who start out in their career in data science. We optimize for models, but we forgot how humans are meant to serve. And today I want to talk about that gap, about what happens when we think like coders, but we can now think more like communicators, designers, and business owners. Because a successful data scientist isn't just about analytics, but it's also understanding the users deeply enough to build things that actually matter or recommend things that is meaningful to the business. So for years, data science worshipped the altar of metrics, accuracy, precision, recall, F scores, and we celebrate these performance benchmarks, and we forget that 99% accurate models that nobody uses is worth exactly zero. And I've seen teams like spend time working on a really complicated algorithm and make all these recommendations using all these economics factors like to do a very complicated rebalancing work. But when we actually experiment it, it actually doesn't work anything like we do it. So that's why it's better to iterate often and experiment directly to the users itself. And I'm speaking on this on my experience because we did a very, very complicated model that required elasticity score for points rebalancing of the Bike Angels program. But it turns out that it doesn't work at all. And we ran experiments over 6 months and we just realized that we have to scrap that feature altogether. And that's the thing with real life. You don't know what you're working on. You kind of just iterate and you test, and what doesn't work, you scrap, and then you build the product on there. You never know what exactly you're trying to build and what works until you actually go out and try it. And this is very similar to entrepreneurship as well. And a lot of early career data scientists get this wrong. When I first started out of school, I mostly focused on AI, deep learning, and all the cool models. But you forget about data cleaning, which is not exciting, or sitting in stakeholder meetings to try and understand what they're working on. And these are business stakeholders who have zero knowledge about statistics. The reality is you will spend a lot of time trying to figure out the data set, how messy it is, what you can do with it, and how you can inform still good data decision making with poor data. And SQL, although I don't know why, but it's not as widely taught in university, but it's something that you spend 80% of your work on, and you also spend a lot of time explaining your work as well. And that's the job. Without clean data, your model's worthless. So the data engineer is going to be your best friend. And without clarity, your insights die in a deck. So you need to understand the business, and that means talking to business stakeholders. And without influence, your impact never scales. So those boring skills that you don't really get to get tested on in university, the clarity, communication, persistence, are what separate from good data scientists to great ones. So if you're early in your career, yes, AI still matters, but not without the fundamentals. So let me tell you about the YouTube's algorithm. In the early days, YouTube optimized for click-through rate. If someone clicked on a thumbnail, success. The result, Clickbaits, misleading titles, endless frustrations. Technically, engagement skyrocketed, but users were angry, overwhelmed, and losing trust. And YouTube engineers realized that the metrics was wrong. It was rewarding curiosity, not satisfaction, so they reiterated. First, they optimized for watch time, so how long you actually stayed. And then for satisfaction, adding user surveys, dislikes, and signals. Later, they added responsibility metrics to diversify recommendation. Each phase was born from not from technical innovation, but rather listening to feedback and criticisms of behaviors from the users as well. Um, so the YouTube algorithm today still isn't perfect, but it's an artifact of continuous learning. So it's about humility, not genius. And people changes and generations of new users come in and they also have different preferences as well. So the algorithm is always evolving. TikTok. Let's contrast that with TikTok now. TikTok didn't really start with a huge data set. It started with a feedback loop. So each swipe, pause, rewatch, skip is an instant feedback. The algorithm learns you in real time, adapting within hours, sometimes minutes, and it doesn't care what you say you like, it watches what you actually do. So this is how it's so brilliant. It's not because it can predict perfectly, it's just it listens continuously and it treats user behavior like a conversation, and that's what user-centric data science look like at scale, where you want to build into the feedback loop, empathy of the user. And this pattern of learning by accident, improving through iteration, isn't new. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin because he noticed that mold that killed bacteria on an unwashed dish. Percy Spencer invented the microwave because a chocolate bar melted in his pocket while he was working on radar. Thomas Edison built 1,000 light bulbs that didn't work until it did work. So every discovery shares a mindset that there's curiosity over certainty, iteration over perfection, and empathy over ego. And data science is no different. So let's bring this back to our daily work. Model is just math until someone believes the story. That's why most powerful data scientists are also storytellers. They don't just show numbers, they build narratives. A compelling data story mirrors every great novel. So you have context, conflict, insight, and resolution. Your Jupyter notebook might be where the analysis happens, but the meeting room is where the decisions happen. So if you can't translate your insight into actions, you haven't finished the job. So visualizations, by the way, isn't decoration, it's language. And a good dashboard can guide understanding, and it doesn't just drown people in charts. And empathy starts before the code. You need to spend time with the users or the stakeholders, sit with customer service reps, see how the teams actually use the tools you build, ask what they do, not just what they do, but why. And you'll start to notice that a dashboard no one checks after 9 a.m. because it doesn't update in time, a metric everyone argues about because no one really understands the definition, a model that people ignores because they don't really trust it. So empathy lets you to design for real life and not just an idealized version. So remember, a less accurate model that people trust will outperform any perfect model that they do not like. So if you want to start practicing user-centric data science, ask the right question, prototype before perfecting, gather feedback, iterate, and then tell the story.